Sydney Vizard for Rebel News, coming to you from Calgary, Alberta, where in just a couple of months from now, we are going to be having our mayoral election. Notably, we had Mayor Gondek, a very unfavorable mayor. She is going to be running again along with municipal parties. This is a new feat for the city of Calgary, but as well, independent candidates are still going to be on the ballot, one of them being Jeff Davison, who we interviewed today. Municipal politics don't get the kind of attention that they often deserve, largely because, well, you look at $1 million budget from a city compared to $1 billion of wasted spending from the feds. Well, we all know which one of those two things we'd rather be concerned with. But despite these issues largely being at a smaller scale than provincial or federal matters, they still matter. Take, for example, last year, Calgary's feeder main collapsed, a spontaneous disruption to our water system, which almost caused a full collapse across the city, disrupting the treated water supply for millions of Albertans. This was something that should have been taken care of. The bills should have been paid. The repairs should have been made prior to this incident even occurring. But our mayor, Jody Gondek, has been going around internationally advocating for XYZ political causes, instead of focusing on the things that Calgarians actually need. Thus, it's no surprise her ratings are some of the lowest across the country, and the time is coming for a potential replacement to take the reins. That's why we spoke to Jeff Davison, an independent candidate running in this year's Calgary mayoral election.
Serving Calgarians has been one of the great honors of my life, and I suppose that's part of the reason why I'd like to go back and do it again. Having served one term, I think, the issues are very different today than what they were 4 years ago, and I don't see those issues getting better. I think we're doubling down on the impact that has been negative on citizens. I think we're not moving forward with that sort of opportunity first attitude. I think City Hall has become a place that really has an attitude of we know best, and they've stopped listening to citizens. And for me, public service is about listening to the community and engaging with them on the items they see. And we just don't see that these days. And I think, the overwhelming sense of issue after issue after issue that we've gone through in this city where, I think Calgarians they're tired of being told the way it is, and they want to have their opinion back. And for me, I think that's just part of the reason why we want to run. Let's get out there, let's talk to people, and let's put together a program that people are asking for. Even in my most recent job now, my job every day is dealing with doctors and nurses and patients and their families and healthcare workers otherwise. Every single day, you have to put a plan together for that best possible patient outcome. And it's very focused on the individual. It's no different at the city of Calgary, right? We've got to get back to this idea that everybody here is in service to Calgarians. And I don't care if you're on the police department or if you're picking up the garbage or you're part of the roads crews. We're all here in service to Calgarians. And that's the number one interior cultural fix we're going to have to fix at the city. Reminding ourselves of why we're here and who we serve is incredibly important. And that's why you need the right leader with the right experience to actually move it forward and deliver on that plan.
You'll be running against the current mayor, Jody Gondek, as well as the newly founded political parties here at a municipal level. How are you going to stand out?
That's all part of the magic of campaigning, right? I mean, for me, I'm not opposed to parties. I've chose to run independently because I've got 25 years in business that tells me I don't need a bunch of yes people around the table, right? What I need is people who can be innovative thinkers how do we move this city forward? And if one of the greatest things about Calgary is the diversity of our communities, how do we ensure that we get that representation at the table? Well, to me, it's about leadership. It's about that experience, and it is about sort of bringing everybody together, finding the common ground, and moving forward with the things that Calgarians care about. And so I don't need a party to do that. Maybe others feel like they do. I certainly think that we've got an incumbent party that already exists on City Council, and they haven't been able to get anything done on City Council. I don't understand what would be different going forward. As somebody who's born and raised in this city, as somebody who's raising 3 kids in this city, I feel like I'm vested here, and I've chose to make Calgary my home, and I want to make sure that other people continue to choose it as well. For Calgary, I think we've lost our way a little bit. We've forgotten where we came from and where we're going. And so when you lose that vision, it's really important to sort of look back in history and say, why did people continue to choose Calgary, right? Like, Calgary's, for me, always been the place of opportunity. And it didn't matter if you came from China or Saskatchewan. People chose Calgary for its entrepreneurial spirit and its get-it-done attitude. And I think we've lost our way on that. And I really want to see us get that back.
Regarding the mass rezoning, a lot of people see it as mass upzoning, densifying their areas that otherwise were the communities they knew and loved. What's your approach going to be on this subject, and what kind of population density do you want to see in Calgary?
Yeah, I think the first order of business is absolutely rolling back the blanket rezoning. We were sold that this this is about density, this is about affordability, and it's not. I have never been sold on this idea that row housing is about more density or affordability. The average row house is into the 700,000s, and all it really does is create parking issues on street, which means we're pitting neighbors against neighbors. I'm looking at managing our growth differently, right? We've got 70,000 people a year moving to Calgary. You're not going to meet density needs by building 4 units at a time. So let's start to think about how we can build new communities within existing communities. I did that as a ward councillor, looking at Springbank Hill. We look at West District. We look at Trinity's project down at Winsport. Those are new communities within existing communities that add the density where the density makes sense. On top of that, we have to be real about the idea of creating new communities. Let's face it, when people move here, often they have young kids and they want to have a backyard. And so for us, it's about managing growth and expectations to ensure that we're building in the downtown, we're building, new communities within existing communities, and we're taking advantage of that new community growth that can meet the needs of the population that's moving here.
And so people have become much more liberated around what housing looks like and what the tenure of housing looks like. But as municipalities, we haven't kept pace with that change. We're still stuck in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Restrictive covenants. What's your feeling on this new approach to the mass rezoning?
Well, at the end of the day, the biggest pain point I see is when hardworking City of Calgary folks are having to say, we're suing the city over things like restricted covenants, over the blanket rezoning. To me, this is not about pitting neighbor against neighbor, right? And so when we roll back the blanket rezoning, that will take away the need for a lot of these folks in the community saying, I have a restricted covenant, how do I enforce that? Because I don't want to see people fighting over how we build our city forward. I want to bring those voices to the table and say, where does density make sense? And let's work together to do that.
In terms of the diversity of Calgarians, immigration is a large topic across the country.
Calgary is the fastest growing city in Canada. Our infrastructure systems are under stress. We face acute labor shortages, and we're working with very limited revenue tools.
What are you as mayor going to do at a municipal level to either advocate for or against or involve yourself in immigration?
Number one, the city, for me, has got to get back to doing the things that are within our lane. Our job is to pay the police and pick up the garbage and make sure the roads are paved, right? When and where we need to advocate, we can do that. But for me, this campaign is really about getting back to basics, right? It's about focusing on our core operations as a city, first and foremost. Where that fits into sort of the story around immigration, I think, for me, it's business licensing. More people moving to Calgary start businesses than anyone else. And so moving forward with that entrepreneurial spirit, that get it done attitude, and making sure that we make people successful in this city by getting them those licenses quickly is important. But I think tying immigration to job growth is a key factor, right? We don't want to see more people move to Calgary and become unsuccessful. We want everybody who comes to Calgary to be successful. And to do that, we need to make sure that, we're managing the right amount of growth and managing that growth through things like housing and affordability, not sort of job creation and other things that I would say would be more of the responsibility of the federal government.
When it comes to instilling Calgary's culture into newcomers, what's your plan on that front?
First of all, again, I think the diversity of our communities is what makes our communities great. I think it's now 44% of Calgary is non-white. And so we have to be realistic that we're a changing city. We're not the city we were even 10 years ago. And that's a good thing, right? But we have to remember where we've come from and where we're going. And so as long as we're putting a collective vision together about what is this city going to be in 10 years? How do we become the entrepreneurial city of the world? Those types of things matter. And it's not about the people that are moving here. It's about the ideas they bring and what they want to deliver and how they want to give back to our community that matters.
Last year around this time, we were seeing water lockdowns across the city due to the collapsing of our critical infrastructure. What are you going to do to address this issue so that it's not just repair trucks here and there constantly, it's an actual solution?
This is the topic about managing growth. It's not always the buildings you put up, but it's the non-sexy items like infrastructure you have to manage. So when 40% of our roads have now fallen into disrepair, when the water's not working and running across our city, we've got fundamental problems that we have to look at. And when the City of Calgary comes out and says in the first 6 months of this year, we now have a $220 million surplus, well, it really begs the question, you keep increasing our taxes and where's the value going? So for me, if we're going to manage growth properly, we have to redirect some of that funding into those core basics to make sure that we can manage growth. Because if you don't get the foundation of the house right, the rest is going to come tumbling down.
How do you plan on making the general things that a city council should be doing attractive?
I think it's just reminding Calgarians of what our job is and why we're here and what our lane is, and encouraging people to say it's time for us to stay within our lane, right? Like, when we're giving money to lawsuits in Montreal, well, what does that have to do with the average taxpayer in Calgary? Nothing. Right? It has to do with the fact that we've gotten our focus lost again. And so my job as mayor is to actually bring the focus back, again, focus on public safety, affordability, and infrastructure, and move forward with a plan over the next 4 years that resets the foundation of Calgary so we can continue to manage growth in a responsible way as we grow. I have proposed a tax freeze, and I'll give you a little bit of context around that. Again, the City of Calgary in the first 6 months of 2025 had a record $220 million surplus. That's the equivalent of about a 12% property tax reduction. And so in a year when we've increased taxes 8.5%, it begs the question, you could have done nothing and still gained 3.5%. So where is that money going? And so I see it a little bit differently. I think it's about a redirection of funding to things that are the priorities of Calgarians, like public safety, like infrastructure, like affordability.
Speaking of public safety, homelessness, drugs, and crime are rampant, especially in the downtown. How are you going to address this, not only with regards to cracking down on those in the criminal aspect of this, but also those who are suffering through it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the challenges we're seeing now downtown are spreading across the city. Every single day I talk to people, and it doesn't matter if it's the northeast or the far south, people are concerned with public safety. So that tells me we have a big problem. I think the biggest challenge we've seen over the last 3 years, and we can talk about this in terms of many things, but it's a failure of the City of Calgary to build partnerships with the other orders of government. So when we think about our downtown and the issues we're seeing with crime and addiction, remember, out of the roughly 3,500 people on the streets downtown, about 180 of those people are responsible for about 98% of the crime. So that tells me we have a policing issue, and we've got to work with our provincial partners to make sure that this isn't sort of an arrest and repeat offender type situation. But what we need more than that is actually the ability to work with the province on what is the healthcare component of this, which is the vast majority of the mental health and addictions pieces that we're seeing on the streets. And so to me, I don't have all the answers to how we're going to fix this today, but I have a lot of ideas, and what I'm really good at is building those partnerships. And so the idea is, how do we bring the province to the table? How do we agree that we have a common problem? And then how do we agree upon, this is my lane and this is the provincial lane, and that's how we're going to solve it? Because I look around at North America right now and I think to myself, every jurisdiction out there is having the same problems. But what's the one thing about Calgary that differentiates us? It's our ability to lead. It's our ability to get things done. And I don't want to be a city that waits for somebody else to come up with a solution. I think with the type of philanthropy we have here, the brilliant minds we have here, we can lead North America out of this problem rather than wait for a solution to be handed to us.
There have also been protests in Calgary where violence has been advocated for. How do you plan on addressing protests that are lawful and peaceful and those that get out of hand and call for violence?
I think the bigger problem is less about the protests and more about unclear bylaws and when and where to enforce those bylaws. I think, even from 2 days ago, we saw bylaw and peace officers tearing down a tree swing from a 9-year-old boy, all the way through to sign bylaws of people putting up illegal campaign signs and bending the rules to do it. What it tells me is that we have to have a complete and comprehensive relook at our bylaw system, because those bylaws should be black and white. There should be no gray area in them. And so when it comes down to protests and where and when violence is there, or how we enforce them or not enforce them, that has to be very clear and not up to interpretation as to when we apply and don't apply the law.
When it comes to infighting within City Council and when it comes to closed-door meetings within City Council, how are you going to address these matters?
So I think we have two different issues there, right? I think the infighting we've seen is because you've had a serious lack of experience and leadership within the members of council. At the end of the day, my job is the chair of that board. My job is to say, folks, let's find the common ground and let's get it done together, right? We've got to agree that we're about moving this city forward and putting citizen voices first. How we're going to do that is we're going to get back to structuring a 4-year strategic plan. So what's really important in any strategic plan is to talk about the focus we have. Number one for me is going to be public safety, affordability, and infrastructure, right? And everything we do needs to ladder to those 3 key elements, right? The goal also in creating a strategic plan is to talk about the things that are no longer on the table, right? So funding things like climate emergency, that is not within the bandwidth of the City of Calgary to solve for the globe, right? And so we need to relook at things like that we're no longer going to talk about and no longer going to do, so that we can get our budgeting right and we can move forward with some clear vision for our city over the next 4 years.
What's the most important thing that you want to impress upon Calgarians that they should be thinking about when it comes to this next election?
I think the biggest issue is, honestly, it's not the issues themselves. I think Calgarians have been well vocal about the public safety issues and the infrastructure issues we're seeing. I think the biggest thing for people is going to come down to who do you trust to lead your city? I think the number one problem the next council is going to have is rebuilding trust with the public. And to me, it's not just about the issues, it's about looking at who has the leadership, who has the experience, and who has the vision to move this city forward. And that's honestly where I think I stand out. You know, having 25 years in oil and gas and technology and now healthcare, as well as having the experience of sitting on city council, it gives me a different perspective than others to say, here's the plan and here's what leadership means. It gives me the right experience to lead a $5.5 billion corporation known as the City of Calgary. And it tells me that we've got the right vision to say, in the next 10 years, where is Calgary going by becoming the entrepreneurial hub of the world? But October 20th is a really important day, right? And if we don't get aligned with candidates like myself who can show that we have the experience and leadership and can move that vision of Calgary forward, I'm concerned that we're going to end up with 4 more years of the same. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen for me. I don't want that to happen for the next generation, because I think how we move forward in the next 4 years is critical to how we're going to manage Calgary's growth over the next 10.
Let me know in the comments, do you think that Jeff should be the next mayor of Calgary, or is someone else better fitted? For Rebel News, I'm Sidney Vizard. While you still have the chance, don't forget to sign the petition at firegondek.com. That's where you can go to see our latest coverage, our most up-to-date coverage on the Mayor of Calgary.